I know that guy. You guys hear? You can hear me? One of those speakers? All right, awesome. Hello, Timothy. It's not bidirectional. That would be interesting, though. You know, I think you and I could give each other's presentations. The thing that struck me about when I saw you present and when we did the panel together, just how similar we think about the problem.
Makes sense.
I have a minute and a half. She'll be over with a cattle prod if she doesn't see me start talking soon, though.
Ladies and gentlemen, our theater sessions are about to begin. Please join us in the theaters. Thank you.
Oh, there she is. Don't come at me with the cattle prod. Maybe that should be security's big opportunity. It's like, what was that movie with Denzel Washington and the submarine movie? It's a question of voltage. What's that? Yeah, Crimson Tide. It's all a question of voltage. That's how you get your developers to do their work. Would that be wrong? Whoa, is that I'm good. I'm good. I'm all loose. I'm going to write a blog post on that now. Crimson Tide and DevOps big opportunity. Asha, you're distracting him. He's coming to my presentation. I can't get his feedback if you're talking to him the whole time. Oh, it's quite all right, sir. You take your time. All right, welcome to DevSecOps Theater. My name is Peter Chestnut. I am the Director of Developer Engagement at Veracode. Informational purposes only, yada, yada, yada. A little bit about myself. I am a development practitioner. So 25 years as a developer at Veracode. I've been there since 2006 as an engineer, as an engineering leader, and now as more of a DevOps evangelist talking about agile transformations, DevOps, and specifically DevSecOps. The reason that we're here is because applications are kind of the weakest part of our infrastructure. We've done a great job hardening the outside, putting in firewalls and intrusion detection and prevention, endpoint stuff. All of that part has been taken good care of, and that's where we spend the most of our money. But 90% of the breaches come through applications. Not necessarily applications that we build, but applications that we buy, open source applications that we now stand up on the outside of our perimeter to help us run our business. And by the way, those applications were designed to take sensitive data in and out of your infrastructure. So if we don't do that well, that's where those leaks are occurring. So some high profile breaches. And some of the reasons that people talk interestingly about security. So anyone recognize this one? Target, right? So in Target, one of the things that I hear often in the field is, hey, we'll protect our crown jewels, we'll protect our important applications. If I was to ask you, if you had an HVAC vendor and you need to create some billing website for them to come in and comp their time in, would you think that's important? Well, if you fished them and got into that, and by the way, you had it connected into your network where they could move laterally and get to your POS systems, now does it sound important? So this is a case where we don't think that's important, we're not going to worry about that one, and yet, there we are. The one on the end affected about half of us in America, right? That's the Equifax breach. Now, their big problem was they didn't understand the bill of materials for the applications that they shipped. And if you don't know that, how would you know if you are subject to a known vulnerability? Something critical that, by the way, they don't even have to worry about understanding your application. They can spray the internet with HTTP requests and find out who got owned. Right? Some of those breaches are just that easy. So AppSec programs, I see a lot of them. I've had the privilege of seeing hundreds of them, from some great companies to some ones that are just struggling. They often look like this, or from the developer perspective, they look like this, right? They're run by their CSNO. They are blocking releases because of the way we interact with those development teams. We do it at the end. We do it when they're anxious to get out the door. This would be like Christmas Eve saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to go out and do my shopping now. And you can never get everything you need. You can never get all of the security baked into that process by doing it at the end. No one learns from that. It just becomes a big fire drill. Now, when you have these programs, there are a couple of different outcomes. The most typical one is this one, where we say there's a gate. Security says there's a gate, but there really isn't a gate. Or there's a gate, but there's nothing to prevent them from going around the gate in a couple of different ways. They either avoid the process completely, or they do their scans but don't do anything about them, or you get those escalating phone calls up the chain to say, hey, my boss is bigger than your boss, he owns the P&L, and he says we release, so we release. Or another bad outcome is there actually is a gate, you can prevent them from going into production, and they don't think that you can. So there's a reckoning that happens here, which also is not a good outcome. Let's talk a little bit about how security is typically done, right? Because like I said, in your, who here does waterfall as part of their development process, right? At least some of us, yeah. How about Agile? Okay, and DevOps. Okay, so when we did this in waterfall at the end and adding all this risk, we were able to keep up at least with our annual pen tests because we were usually releasing annually. But when we talk about the movement to DevOps now, so we'll start with waterfall, you have large teams and long releases. 1 to 4 a year. 4 is probably the outside. You are really doing waterfall well, which is an odd term, with a really large team of people. Lots of specialists, lots of time baked in for doing testing. Now, when you move to Agile, now we're talking about releasing once or twice a month, and a very small team, 6 to 12 people now, moving at that pace. When we get to DevOps, we're talking about releasing multiple times a day, usually hundreds of times a year, with that same team. So one of the things I want to make sure that I point out that often people don't understand, DevOps is usually run in some form of Agile methodology, whether that be Kanban or Agile Scrum or Scrumban or one of those methodologies. Because in that transformation from waterfall to Agile, you've learned the things you need to get to DevOps. It's just doing them at extremes. So let's talk a little bit about how we got here. So this is your typical waterfall methodology, right? We have our silos, and this is the way our companies are organized, so you could just put VP titles against each of those for your companies likely. And each one has their silo of responsibility, and we throw things over the wall between them. So what ends up happening in this cycle is I've got my product owner, and they're dictating what we're going to do. As we get farther away from that meeting, where those things have been decided, I lose the fidelity. So by the time we get to operations, they don't know why we built it, they don't know who we built it for, they don't even understand how it's supposed to work, and they're left to guess. The same thing with our development team. So developers come in and say, hey, we've built according to these specifications. Now, development always includes trade-offs, and those trade-offs get passed over pretty well into quality, but by the time they get to operations, they don't understand them. They just know the application isn't performing very well, and once it gets hit in the face with production data in a production environment, it doesn't work the way that they intended to because they don't have those environments to test against. Which is our last problem, is that stuff flowing backwards, right? There is no feedback, so they complain, but they don't get much mind share from those teams. So when we went to Agile, we did that first level transformation. We said, okay, let's see. We're going to put the people that dictate what we're going to do in with the people that write it and the people that test it. And that's what we thought of as testing, is just functional testing. Now, we get better continuity here because quality and developers start to think about, for me to claim that I am finished with something means it has to be written and tested and ready for customers. So we started to rethink and started to do things like test-driven development and writing good unit tests. I mean, people were writing unit tests here, but only the people that like really, really cared and were passionate about it. Most of us just got away without doing it. So similarly, the application knowledge, QA now understands the trade-offs that you've made and tests for those kind of edge conditions, but we have that same problem back and forth with operations. We don't understand the trade-offs that you made. It's just on fire when it shows up. When we get to DevOps, we put all of those people in a room together, right? We want all those concerns on the table. And we get that continuity where I'm talking about an idea and operations is going to say, hey, here's how something similar is working in our production environment now. Let's make sure we don't make those mistakes. Let's add that into our test cases. From a technology point of view, this is all driven by economics. When you start with waterfall and you're doing things once a year, it doesn't matter how much those things suck. It might be a day's worth of effort or a week's worth of effort for you to do some particular task in this process of releasing your application. It might take you weeks or months to go and automate it. Think about the payback cycle. If you release once a year and it takes you a week to automate something that takes you a day, it will take you 7 years to actually get any of that back. You don't see any benefit from it, so people don't do it. Now, some people do this for fun, probably some of you in the audience. That's not my gig, but you know, whatever. When you get to Agile, it's all about making these things repeatable, right? Making them run in the time frames you need, because you can't release twice a month if it takes you 2 months to test. So this is the biggest cost in doing that transformation. That first level transformation is all about, oh my God, my testing backlog and all those big spreadsheets of stuff that I need to do. How do I get after that? So your teams are going to spend months or years getting after that backlog, and we went through it at Veracode. It was 6 years we were doing waterfall, and then we switched over to Agile, and it took us years to get back to that point of saying, we've automated the really important stuff now. But when you get to DevOps and you're releasing multiple times a day, you can't take a handoff. You can't have a test that runs for a day or hours, right? They all have to run in minutes. Okay, I'm going to presume that at least one person in this audience wants me to walk through this. So this is the Agile Scrum process. There are two key roles in this. The first one is our product owner over here on the left with the light bulb above their head. Now, this person's job is to understand what's important to the business now. In waterfall terminology, we would look out a year and say, what is the customer going to want in a year? Now all we need to know is next release or a month out, and create a prioritized list. We go to the team and we talk about it, and we gain an understanding as a team of whether we're going to commit to this story or whether we understand this story. We do something called planning poker to do that. In that planning poker session, the team gets an understanding of the story, make sure there are no gaps. They have all the people that they need in the room to do that. So that way, when they take it into their planning session, they say, Scrum is done over what's called a sprint. It's a time box. Think of it as 1 to 6 weeks that the team works and says, we're going to take in some set of work and we're going to commit to it as a team to say, we are done when we finish this. So the team's going to do that. They're going to say, we commit to maybe the top 5 things off of this list because it's prioritized. We're going to take it in and we're going to talk about this every day. Now, this is a daily stand-up, 5 to 10 minutes. You answer 3 important questions. What did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And is there anything blocking me? This meeting is run by your servant leader, your Scrum Master. Their job is not to be the boss of the team. Their job is to remove obstacles. So when we talk about blockers, the critical thing is for them to say, aha, I can go get you that resource. I can go get an answer to that question for you. They are there to help you run efficiently, because the last thing you want to do is put work down to go back and pick it up later. So those kind of things are the thing that drives them. That's their job for you. We're going to also track it. Usually you'll see these boards with swim lanes in them from, I got something to do, it's in progress, it's in test, it's done, it's shipped. Those are your Scrum boards. And we're going to track that stuff physically and usually virtually as well. Now, at the end of this sprint, we're going to get together and we're going to show our product owner what we've done, and they accept or reject those stories based upon whether we have reached the acceptance criteria inside of them. And then we do a retrospective. This is all part of the Agile and DevOps methodology, is getting better all the time. So in your retrospective, the entire team looks over the work that you just completed and answers 3 questions. What went well? What did not go well? And how are we going to change to get better? So when I was Scrum Master, it would be what sucked, what didn't suck, and how do I suck less next time? It's critical to think about the way those teams are driven. All they want to do is get better every time. Did we finish the work that we committed to? If not, why not? How could we have found that earlier? Now, our security people are typically here, rubbing the window. They're not invited to the meetings. They don't know or understand this process. So they're looking in, hoping that things go right, because they'll know they see it in test, and I have time to do that. So what happens? The output of this Scrum is supposed to be something that you can deliver to a customer, but we haven't thought about security yet. So they come in and say, well, here's 40 things I need you to go do now. Team says, 40 things? We're done, we're ready to go. What are we going to do? Well, can we fix the most important ones? Right? So now you have to break the news to them. Well, I started with 100. I'm down to 40 of the ones I hope you guys are going to fix. So that's your starting point, and you never get all the way there. You're fighting for budget with those teams because of where you've done it. You've now discovered all the risk in that application at the very end. All right, so now let's talk about DevOps. This quote from Nathan Harvey, I use this in almost all of my presentations when I talk about DevOps. It really speaks to the essence of what you get when you do this well. So let's say that this is my product team over here on the left. Here are my customers in the middle, and this is my support team. DevOps is all, for most people, thinking about how do I release software as fast as I possibly can, and that's great. So here's my team, and they're releasing twice a day, and it's awesome, and the customers are loving it, until one day, Tim calls up support and says, hey, that new feature you shipped yesterday doesn't really work the way I thought it would. It broke. And the support people over here say, what new feature are you talking about? I haven't seen that. I don't understand that. If we focus DevOps on just making this team fast and ignore the fact that the rest of our company has to understand the things that are going on, from our support team to our pre-sales and our sales teams to understand what we actually have in the catalog, our marketing team, we can't leave the rest of the company behind. You have to bring everyone along for the ride and rethink how you do business. So again, that's why this one speaks to me so much. So let's talk about DevOps team, because I hear this a lot and I hear lots of definitions. Usually they're talking about this. Let me bring you to my DevOps people or my DevOps person. They're talking about release engineers that write automation. Those are important people, but that's not what I mean by DevOps team. What I mean by DevOps team is a team that is responsible from stem to stern, cradle to grave, for the features that they write. At Amazon, the rule is you write it, you run it. And the reason that they do that is because if this development team is responsible, and this is was my operations team, it's their problem now. I don't have to worry about that. I got features to go right. But if now we group them together and say, you're going to wear the pager too, and you get woken up at 2 in the morning, you're going to start to think differently about the software that you write and the fact that you need to put monitoring and telemetry in that application to help you when it breaks, to figure out what went wrong and then go back there and fix it. This is all about feedback. Okay? Unless you give them responsibility for what they write, they are not going to change how they write it. Security, again, worst possible place. We'll just put them right at the end here. That's not the place to be talking about security. We have to talk about security from the earliest phases when we're just talking about that feature. And we need to get the feedback from our monitoring and operations team on what threats we're seeing. Do you have a blue team and a red team? Are we using that information to inform our threat models in our planning sessions? are we talking about security throughout this process? Because if we're not, again, we're not getting the feedback and understanding that we need of how we're not doing it well. So from a strategy point of view, there are some key aspects. People are largely the problem. I was actually interviewed yesterday where they said, hey, explain Thanksgiving and DevOps, how do those things match? And I was like, DevOps is people. It's like Soylent Green. You can't do this without people, and the people are your problem. If you are in security, think about your peer in development. Do you know who they are? Do you know how they're goaled? Have you ever sat down and had a conversation with them, except when you're, doing that budget conflict dance? If you're in development, do you understand and know the people in your security organization that are there, should be there to help you get your product secure? If not, why not? It's easy to do an us versus them when it's development and security. It's harder when it's Pete and Tim, where I've actually had conversations and I build a friendship and a relationship with them. Once you have this, this should be your top priority. It is the one thing that will unlock conversations for you. If you don't have it, every conversation is hard. If developers don't feel accountable for the software that they write, then when you pick up the phone and say, I need you to fix something, no, I don't, my goals say ship software fast. It says nothing about security. So until you can get that baked in and get that accountability, and again, let me be very clear. I was at a B-Sides conference with someone from OWASP, and they said, we are going to hold the developers accountable. How does that feel? If you're on the development side, how does that feel to you? If the conversation was, this is why security is important for us, and development stands up and says, I take accountability for my work. The outcome of what I write is important to the company, and it needs to be secure. Completely different conversation. Now you can come in as a partner, and you can come in and help them. Say, I am here to help. I am here to train you. I am here to provide you with tools. Get it baked into the goals, because it makes those conversations so much easier. We have something called the State of Software Security. There's actually a little pamphlet on the desktops here. Incredibly valuable resource. We measure the things that get more secure outcomes. We take a look at how you consume our service, how you consume our product, which teams are doing it well and which ones are struggling. And we map that out. So one of the first ones is developers do not know how to do security. They were never trained in it. This is not something that when I went to college, was even available at the time. Even for recent college grads, they may have an application security course available to them. They might not, but it's certainly not a required course. So the only option for us is to take this as a carrying cost. We have to train them. If we want secure outcomes, then we need to teach them how to do it. There's a 20% increase in productivity if you give them this training. Now there's a couple ways to do this. We could do this on demand with e-learning. We could do this through instructor-led training, and my strong preference is you have data. If you are doing any security scanning at all, you know what your teams are struggling with. So my favorite one is you fill a room with pizza and then you fill it with developers. Developers come for free pizza. So you have an opportunity now while they're eating to talk to them for an hour about the most important thing to the program today. So take a look at your data. There is something in there that you can say, that's what I want to focus on for now. And by the way, if we're measuring at a reasonable rate, I can also see whether that's improving. So if I talk to them about SQL injection, does the incidence rate of SQL injection go down over time? You can measure that. Now you have ROI, you can go for more budget. Hey, look what we did with SQL injection. Let's do it for cross-site scripting. Let's talk to them about open source. You also need to understand how the sausage gets made. So has anyone read the Phoenix Project? Excellent. It should be on your reading list. If you are doing Agile now and thinking about DevOps, this is a book that you should read. It's very easy. It's a story. It's not even a text. It's not a textbook. It's a story about a company and how they figured this stuff out. Talks about the 3 ways of DevOps. It's an excellent, excellent resource. It starts to help you understand the terminology. So we go back to that agile picture and talk about the relationships and talk about attending meetings. If you went up to the scrum master for one of your teams and said, hey, I would like to be a chicken in your next planning meeting, their head's going to fall off. You are now using their lingo. So in Scrum, there are two types of people in a meeting. There are chickens and pigs. Pigs are the ones that do the work, and chickens are the ones that come and watch silently. It is part of the process. It is allowed. You need to just go talk to them and ask. So understanding their ceremonies and their terminology and starting to get baked into the process and understanding how that sausage gets made builds that empathy. Okay, next. Great, we found a whole bunch of stuff. Now what? If our application program is only about scanning, we can now stop. But it isn't. We have to reduce risk. Again, developers are not trained. What do? Providing them the coaching that they need to understand the things that are coming back to them. They don't know what a CWE is or a CVE. They have never heard those TLAs. We need to explain it to them. We need to show them how easy it is to avoid some of these things. The OWASP top 10. Some of those things have been in there forever, and they are super simple to avoid. So providing them with a resource to do that, now I'll tell you that as Veracode, that is something that we provide as part of our service. It's something that you can provide as a security team, or you could outsource to someone. But the point is, have something available for them to pick up the phone and ask questions. All right, InfoSec conferences today are really starting to pick up on this idea. Think about how many are in your security team, what percentage of your time in that InfoSec team can be spent on AppSec, and how many development teams you have, how many applications you have, how many of those ceremonies, so 5 to 7 ceremonies in all those Agile teams, across how many Agile teams, across how many applications. You can't do it. What you want, remember that security picture, we want to be talking about security all the time. Well, we can't be in all the meetings, but there's someone that can. We have members on those teams that can be uptrained to understand 80-20-ish about the things that are important to the security team. You can start with simple checklists. If it looks like that, it smells like this, or it's blue, then I need you to come talk to me. Otherwise, you can use static analysis or dynamic analysis to do the security testing on this. So train them, they become your force multiplier. And by the way, if there's a security incident with a product, guess who you're going to go talk to? If a new vulnerability is found in an open source library, and because you all have bill of materials for all of your applications, you'll know whether or not you're vulnerable. If not, you can come talk to us at the booth. Because you have that, you now know which teams to go contact, you know who the security champion is for that project. You can go to them and say, we have a vulnerability, it's extreme, I need you to come up with a plan, I need you to tell me how long it's going to take the team to do it, I need to get it prioritized, I need feedback, and I need to know when it's going to be done. You can distribute that workload across your company and become very effective at responding to incidents. You can do tabletop training exercises for this as well. The other thing is, you need to tell them when it's time to come to you. They are not security experts. So when are they over their skis? They need to be able to recognize that and know when to pick up the phone. As you holistically look at an application security program, from my perspective, these are the ingredients that you need. We need training throughout. From the day they start to write code. So this is this whole shift left thing that we talk about. There's been some talks over in the continuous delivery area. We've had some in security. Here in DevSecOps, it's the same thing. The farther you shift left, in other words, the earlier in the cycle that you can find these things, the easier and cheaper it is to fix them. Think about, so our CTO, his dad used to work for GE aircraft engines. And he had a story where he's like, well, you know, we get the fan blades in, we go construct the engine, we put it in the test jig, and we'd fire it up, and then the thing would blow up because one of the fan blades was bad. This is what happens in our application security program. Would I rather find the thing on the loading dock when I'm looking at those fan blades before I spend thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars to put this thing together and then put it in a test jig to find out it could fail? It's finding things as early as possible. It's putting and baking quality in at the earliest possible time. So we want to do that the day they start writing code. We want to look at the libraries that they're bringing in. Are there any known vulnerabilities in there? If there are, what are we going to do about them? We're also going to monitor that through time. Because if you saw Tim Jarrett's talk on open source, your software ages like milk, not wine. And think about this. Most modern applications, 80 to 95% open source. And I'll tell you as a developer that when I integrated an open source library, that was the end of the conversation. I put it away, close the door, I'm done. So think about your house and only cleaning 10%, the same 10% of your house all the time. How long would you want to live there? Your applications are getting dusty because we're not looking at what we're incorporating into our applications. As soon as I have something that can operate, I want to run it and run dynamic analysis against it. Think of this as an automated pen test if you've never done this. We can find certain things about your application in its running state. And by the way, you want to run that all the way into your production environment. The key reason is that those environments, quality and staging and production, are all maintained by different people. So when operations goes in and makes a change in the production environment, do you think they're making that change in quality? I doubt it. So if I'm running dynamic analysis here, I better be running it here to find those configuration mistakes, to find that configuration drift, to understand what's going on in that environment. I don't need people to do it. Machines can do that very well. Down at the bottom, your security team, incredibly important job. At the earliest stages, we're talking to them about threat modeling. And remember I said it's that feedback loop. Go talk to other parts of the organization. If you have a blue team, use them. Understand what's happening in your application today. Not theoretical, real. Talk to your red team. How are they getting into the application? How could we start to avoid this? How can I uptrain everyone on understanding those threats? Look at the design. Let's not find a mistake 3 months after it's been made, because there are thousands of decisions that get made based upon that one. So let's find it early and make sure that we don't make it in the first place. The whole key to this process is to make it come out of here secure, right? So the more that we train them, the better they get, and then I don't have to find it, I don't have to track it, I don't have to fix it, I don't have to retest it. Think of the cost savings and the velocity you get about not having to track a bug. It was a bug that was never written. So we're going to do that during our remediation sessions and teaching them how to fix things. Now, pen testing is still important here, but we're going to do it on the high value stuff. I do not want to spend hundreds of dollars an hour for a pen tester to go tell me I have a SQL injection. I can find that for pennies here. It costs me hundreds and thousands of dollars to do it there. As security organizations, we cannot white knuckle our releases anymore. We don't have that time. They will walk by us. So what we need to do is right-size this. We're going to bake this into what's called a CI/CD pipeline. In DevOps, this is the way software gets released. And I'm going to walk you through an example based upon a DevOps team that I created for a microservice that we ship to our customers or ship as part of our product. So again, it starts with that backlog. That's that thing in Scrum that tells me what I want to do. Developers are going to pick that work up and they're going to write their unit tests and do their testing and their development. Now, we're also going to add in something else. Part of Scrum is called this definition of done. It's basically a checklist that says, from the time I pick a piece of work up to the time I put it down, what are all the things that I need to do to say, it's really done now. We're going to add in security to that because we want to test at the earliest possible time, and we want to prevent vulnerabilities from getting in our source code base. So they do that as part of their definition of done before they check in. So remember I talked about pen testing. There's a place for that. It's over here. It's before you get into this part, right? So it's pre-check-in. They can check it into a branch. They can put it in an operating environment. They can say, hey, pen tester, please go at it. You got however long you need. I don't care. The work, think of it this way. The work is the work. If I need to get it done, then let's do it. And let's do it before we release it. So I'm going to pen test it. I'm going to get those results back. I'm going to fix things. When we both agree it's ready, I'm going to check it in. Because everything that happens after here needs to be fast. On every check-in, we're going to come up and we're going to run a build, and we're going to run some tests. We're going to run our unit testing, and we're also going to run static analysis, the same static analysis as we have here. So they're able to take the test before they take the test. they know or should know whether it's going to pass. Now this is something that trips everybody up when they start doing this, because developers get lazy, or they're like, hey, this one line change isn't going to hurt anything. I'm just going to check it in on a Friday afternoon as I'm running out the door, only to find out that the build failed because it failed the unit test, which I should have run because that's what I'm supposed to do. So this is our assurance test. This is trust but verify. I get that result. This is CI, continuous integration. This is not new. It just has a new fancy name. We have been doing CI for decades. So think of this as your lints and your code complexity tools, cyclic complexity and all that stuff. That's the thing that this is. We're adding in static analysis to that mix, but it's just another static technology. If it's broken, it doesn't pass muster, then we're going to break the build and we're going to send them back. We're going to synchronize to their backlog, say here's the work that you need to do to actually get this to be incorporated, and we're going to back that code change out. Again, fast feedback. Let's find and bake in quality as early as possible. Let's presume that my team is awesome. They're going to move on to our working environments now. We're in our QA environment, our staging environment, and then eventually our production environment. And maybe you have UAT in there as well. I'm going to run more testing. In this case, we run dynamic analysis. This is a single-page app, very low surface area, very quick to run. I'm going to take that dynamic analysis, combine that with any regression tests that I have to say, will this code change break me? And I'm going to get a result. And based on that result, I'll either move back or I'll move forward into my production environment. And this is the CD portion of that pipeline, continuous deployment, continuous delivery. Right? I'm moving the software from the point that they checked it in all the way into my production environment automatically. This has to be based on tests that I trust. This is super simple if you're doing Greenfield, which is what this was. Right? Greenfield project. Now, you can speak to people like David Whalen about how hard that is to do in a brownfield environment, or Sebastian back here about how hard that is to bake into a process that's already been set in stone for years or decades. And it's not easy, but it is worth it. The more trivial you make releases, the quicker you can make code changes, the quicker you can update your security. So getting to this point is incredibly important, and it's worth the effort. All right, so in conclusion, DevOps is inevitable. You need to learn it. You need to start building those relationships and talking with those people that build the software to help them. This is not, again, an adversarial relationship. It should be one of cooperation and assistance to say, I'm going to give you the training and tools that you need to succeed, and when things fall down, I'm there to help pick them up. We are going to learn from this together, and we're going to bake a better process. And these are two excellent examples of people that use our product today to do just that. So you need to adjust to the new way of doing things and embrace this as a new partnership. Let's see. I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Your red team, what exactly are they doing? Delineate that from your manual penetration testing.
I'm sorry, they can hear, but I can't.
Yeah, just delineate your manual penetration testing.
Yep.
From that and your red team testing.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, so, all right, so the question was the difference between man pen testing and red teaming. Pen testing is usually something you do periodically. There is a fixed schedule on which you do your pen testing. You say, we might do it biannually, we might do it on every release boundary. Your red team is something that is attacking your application all the time and keeping your blue team sharp, right? This is a continuous, think of it as a continuous pen test. Now this is very expensive, not every company in the world has these. I find them to be a little more oddball in fact that they are very expensive and they are hard to keep together because these people are in high demand. So certain companies in the world have excellent capabilities in this area and some have none. The critical part is to figure out if you have one, how can you use them? Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you. Yes, David.
So when you're going through and you're doing your tests, you identify the vulnerabilities and you work with the developers to educate them to not have that vulnerability again, say cross-site scripting.
Yes, sir.
And you still see it popping up. What is some of the strategies that you've done to stop it from popping again? I mean,
excellent question. Right, so there we need more data. So the question about I've done some training and it's not having the right impact. So you need to look at who is attending that training. Do I have someone that's maybe moved from a team that hasn't taken it before? Do I have a new employee? So when you're building out this training, make it repeatable. Make it something that you can give to your new employees the day they come in the door. There's a company that I've worked with that is a Veracode customer that does 2 weeks of security training for every single developer before their hands touch keyboards. Here are the things that we struggle with, here's how to avoid them, and here are the tools that you need to do that. So baking that into your process to say, we've learned and here's what you need to know, and when it falls down, that's the retrospective, right? Did they actually even run the tests? So I look at utilization. Well, I gave you the tool, did you run the tool? I gave you the service to go and talk to someone to understand this vulnerability. Did you make use of this? So in our quarterly business reviews, when I go sit with customers and we look at those applications that can't meet the security policy, I start asking those questions. Are you used consultation? Have you done the training that you need? Because usually the answer is no, and you can start to, as you measure more in your application space, you'll understand the high-performing teams from the ones that struggle and try to map the things that they do in your organization to the ones that are struggling and try to crossbreed those. Right? You can gamify this if that's your corporate culture. But you can learn from the data that you get. Anybody else? All right. We have a couple of other sessions today. Let's see. Oh, and Sebastian's going to be speaking again. Great talk from Sebastian on how McKesson uses our product. There is a demo booth over here where you can go and take a look at our applications. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.